What if the Jedi Council split up Anakin and Obi Wan during the Clone Wars after sensing them forming an attachment with each other? That's our story for today. Hope you guys enjoy, and let's get right into it. Our story begins inside of the Jedi Temple Council chambers, as Mace Windu and Grandmaster Yoda are sitting with Obi Wan Kenobi. Night has set on Coruscant, and the two masters called Kenobi in here, after his recent mission, posing as Reiko Hordeen in order to foil a plot to assassinate Chancellor Palpatine. In the end, the mission was a success. Obi-Wan helped to save the Chancellor and bring the bounty hunters into custody. But despite the victory, Obi-Wan hadn't been himself in recent days. After the mission concluded, Obi-Wan had to reveal the truth to Anakin. The Council hid the fact that Obi-Wan was still alive when Obi-Wan went undercover, as they couldn't risk Anakin getting in the way of the mission. But none of this was sitting right for Kenobi. He lied to his closest friend, former Padawan, and the man he now thought of as a brother. Yoda and Windu could never understand the bond they shared, fighting with one another. Obi-Wan was always one to secretly and unwillingly form attachments, and they never seemed to work out in his favor. Anakin was still angry with him because of this mission, and Obi-Wan hated it. Windu asked Obi-Wan why this mission bothers him so much, and Obi-Wan said that they lied to Anakin, a man and a Jedi they are supposed to trust. And Windu just said that Anakin is a Jedi. He must realize that this was for the greater good and be able to move on. Obi-Wan brushed him off, saying that Anakin isn't like the rest of the Jedi. For him, there is nothing more important than friendship and loyalty, almost to a fault. Obi-Wan said that despite everything he and the other Jedi have tried to teach Anakin about sacrifice, he may never truly understand. Obi-Wan looked to Yoda, saying that if he could sacrifice him to end this war, he would do it in an instant. Yoda nodded, saying he would do the same with Obi-Wan, with any Jedi, and any Jedi should do the same with each other. Obi-Wan turned around, facing the window now, staring out to where he knew Padme's apartment to be. Obi-Wan wondered if Anakin were there right now, and he told Yoda that any Jedi would make that trade, except for Anakin. Windu asked Obi-Wan what exactly he's trying to say, and Obi-Wan said that abstractions such as peace don't actually mean much to Anakin. He is loyal to people, and he expects the same loyalty in return. Obi-Wan slightly smiled as he said that Anakin would stop at nothing to save him, because Anakin thinks he would do the same for him. Obi-Wan could feel Yoda in Windu's gaze as he lowered his head and admitted the truth that it's because Anakin knows that Obi-Wan would do the same for him. Yoda asked Obi-Wan firmly what his true concern is. So, Obi-Wan said that he knows Anakin can do anything except for betray a friend, which is exactly what Obi-Wan did to him by lying about his death. Obi-Wan looked at both masters in the eyes, and he said he doesn't think Anakin will ever truly trust them again, and he's not entirely sure that he should. And with that, Obi-Wan would leave the council. He would go down to his personal quarters, and he would fall asleep for longer than intended, until a firm knock came to his door. It was a temple guard, informing Obi-Wan that the council has gathered and requests the presence of Skywalker and Kenobi. Obi-Wan rubbed his eyes awake and used the Force to center himself as he thanked the guard and moved towards the council elevator. Obi-Wan felt a glimmer of hope for a moment. Perhaps the council has come to their senses and will personally apologize to both him and Anakin. But it was never that easy with the council. Obi-Wan entered and he stood beside Anakin, who joked that he's not usually the late one. Obi-Wan shook his head, stifling a laugh as the two of them bowed to the council. The message would come from Mace Windu. He looked to both Skywalker and Kenobi, then told them that at the beginning of the war, it was obvious how excellent of a duo the two of them were, but it seems that in the heat of war, the Jedi way has been cast aside by many Jedi in this order, including the two of them. Yoda pointed his stick outward, telling Skywalker and Kenobi that an attachment they have formed, forbidden this is, and the risk of either of them actually being killed could unlock something dangerous in the other. So, Yoda leaned forward and he told the two of them that their partnership in battle has ended. Separated, the two of them must be. Obi-Wan felt sick. He didn't even have to look at Anakin to know how he was feeling. Anakin didn't understand. How could they split up the team like this? The two of them fought and saved Kamino. They fought on Christophsis, Geonosis, Mandalore, Malastare. The list went on and on. Anakin wanted to argue, but Obi-Wan put a calming hand on his shoulder as he told the council they understand and they await their next orders. And the two of them were dismissed. The two Jedi would soon walk down a flight of temple stairs as Anakin exclaimed his displeasure with all of this. How could they do this? It's unfair. But Obi-Wan, as always, was putting on a show as he told Anakin that perhaps the council is right. Maybe they have gotten too close. Anakin scoffed as he told Obi-Wan they're not droids. Anakin said he fights for the people that he cares about, whether it's the clones, Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, or... Anakin stopped himself before he said Padme, but he and Obi-Wan both knew what he wanted to say. Obi-Wan just once more said that perhaps this is for the best, and he separated from Anakin as the two of them would indeed be forced onto different paths. For the next series of battles, Anakin was reassigned to a strike force under Jedi Master Plo Koon, leading assaults on Outer Rim strongholds with Ahsoka still by his side. Obi-Wan remained at the forefront of the Republic's war effort, commanding a fleet in the Mid-Rim. Neither of them had spoken out against the ruling, but both carried the weight of it into their battles. 3 months would go by, and the war churned on. Victories would come, but they lacked the precision of before. The seamless rhythm that they once had, the understanding that never even needed to be spoken, was gone. Anakin's attacks had grown even more reckless. Each battle was a desperate attempt to find the same certainty that he possessed with Obi-Wan, as Obi-Wan knew how to keep Anakin grounded and patient until the perfect moment to unleash him. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan found himself hesitating more often, second-guessing what should have been instinctual. There were a couple of battles that the Republic was pushed back on that Obi-Wan blamed himself for. Anakin had often let their attacks be free and reckless when need be. Obi-Wan didn't have that same instinct, and maybe it made him a better Jedi, but it was costing the lives of innocent people in battle. In another battle, on the destroyed streets of Megiddo, Anakin led a spearhead against the Separatist army, carving a path through the droid legions with a ferocity that sometimes unsettled even his own men. The mission was a success, but as the dust settled, he turned to where he expected to see Obi-Wan, instinctively seeking the half-smile and sarcastic steady presence that always followed him. But Obi-Wan was not there, only silence, and soon Ahsoka was even off on a training assignment with other Padawans. This moment would stretch for a long while before Anakin clenched his jaw and forced himself forward as Captain Rex, Wolf, and Plo Koon moved in. And in the fields of Ord Radama, Obi-Wan sat alone in a dim command tent. His troops were outside, celebrating a hard-fought battle, but he remained distant, staring at the holo display without truly seeing it. He was with Luminara Unduli for this battle, and she was not anywhere close to Anakin's personality. She was quiet, balanced, and did not celebrate victory with the clones. She and Obi-Wan remained in the tent, studying quietly, and his mind wandered back to a time on Christophsis when he and Anakin stood side by side, outnumbered, exhausted, yet certain that they would win because they worked together. That certainty was gone now. The Republic had won the day, but victory often felt hollow. And then Felucia would come along. It was a jungle world of vibrant chaos, where battle droids marched through fungal forests under the command today of General Grievous. Anakin would lead the assault on Felucia, pushing deep into enemy lines, hoping to meet Grievous for the first time. Ahsoka was still on her Padawan assignment, but soon Anakin, on his scouting trip, was overlooking the Separatist camp. He climbed into a tree and radioed up to the command ship, telling Rex and Yularen that he found them. He found Grievous. Rex and Yularen listened intently, readying themselves, but then, suddenly, there was nothing. Anakin's transmissions had just ceased. His troopers called out for Anakin as they descended into the forests and began scouring the battlefield, but there was no sign of the Jedi Knight. No body, no beacon, just an eerie silence. And hours later, across the galaxy, Obi-Wan Kenobi stood aboard a Republic Venator, watching the holotable flicker with the grim report. Anakin Skywalker has gone missing in action. Kenobi's heartbeat slowed, each breath sharp and unsteady. He'd lost men before, of course, good soldiers, fellow Jedi, but this was different. A weight settled in his chest, suffocating him. Anakin was the closest thing he still had to family, and now he was gone. Had he fallen in battle? Been taken? Obi-Wan's mind raced with possibilities, but none of them provided any relief. He exhaled slowly, gripping the edge of the table as if grounding himself would stop the tide of dread rising up in him. Had the council been wrong? Had their separation weakened them rather than strengthened them? He'd fought beside Anakin for years now, and when it mattered most, he had not been there to save him. The thought burned inside of Obi-Wan, and he needed someone to blame. And since Obi-Wan had no idea who had taken or defeated Anakin, it was simple. He blamed the Jedi Council. So, soon, as a handful of council members gathered via hologram for a report of the mission to Felucia, they awaited Obi-Wan's hologram, but it didn't show up. Instead, Obi-Wan soon burst through the council doors in person, looking to Yoda and Windu, asking what is being done to find Anakin. Windu assured Kenobi that scouts in the 501st are searching for him, but Obi-Wan turned, saying he is going out to Felucia. He will find Anakin. Yoda sternly told Obi-Wan that his mission is elsewhere, but the Jedi Master was already gone. Yoda looked to the floor, shaking his head, as he said that Ahsoka will take the 212th and follow Obi-Wan, go to Felucia as reinforcements. And later on Felucia, Anakin Skywalker was in a ray shield containment field, being electrocuted over and over again by 4 Magna Guards. General Grievous knew Anakin had been tailing them, so he set up the trap, and now he was interrogating Anakin about secret hyperlane coordinates into Coruscant. Grievous wanted to attack the Republic capital earlier than Dooku and Sidious were planning, take everything he had and throw it at Coruscant, end this war and end the Jedi, but he needed these coordinates that Anakin was refusing to hand over. So, Grievous decided Anakin would give them up, or he would soon die from the torture, and again, the guards electrocuted him. And above the base, Obi-Wan and Ahsoka would soon enter the jungle. They traced Anakin's last known position to this spot, where he just vanished. Ahsoka placed a hand against a thick tree, closing her eyes. She'd been practicing psychometry, but she was still inexperienced. The force of the memories here was overwhelming. There was struggle, pain, metal hands dragging a warrior away. She pointed towards a patch of thick vines, covering a hidden entrance, invisible beneath the foliage, and it could block the clone sensors. The Separatists had prepared for this. Obi-Wan turned to Ahsoka, who readied herself, but he shook his head. They'd called for reinforcements, and someone needed to wait here in case the Separatists tried to escape. So with a final glance, Obi-Wan would step inside, vanishing into the darkness below. The underground chamber was huge, and a dim glow illuminated the tunnel. But as Obi-Wan moved deeper, there was a sudden tremor in the Force, making him stop. The shadows ahead shifted, and then the sound of heavy, clicking footsteps echoed through the area. 3 Acklays were moved down here to guard against intruders, the same creature Obi-Wan had fought on Geonosis as the war began. And Obi-Wan barely had time to leap, as a jagged claw sliced down at him. He twisted mid-air as another Acklay lunged, snapping at his head. Kenobi rolled, but the third came from the side. A claw raked across his shoulder, tearing fabric, grazing skin, and Obi-Wan yelled in pain, spinning his saber in a defensive arc, trying to refocus himself. The creatures attacked again, this time in unison, forcing him back against the metal wall. Obi-Wan adjusted his stance, then surged forward, slashing across one's legs. It screeched and collapsed, and he plunged his saber into its mouth, then pulled the ceiling down with the force on another. The last Acklay struck wildly, but Obi-Wan ducked under a claw, slashed through its front leg, then leapt onto its back, and with a single stroke, he severed its head. And from here, Kenobi found the electrical room, then plunged his lightsaber into the main control panel. Sparks burst, and the base went dark. Obi-Wan moved through the corridors. The Force was guiding him in the darkness, until he reached a heavy cell door. He sensed the presence behind it, faint but unmistakable, and with a single cut, he severed the lock and stepped inside. Anakin was inside the ray shields, bruised and battered, so Obi-Wan slashed through the bindings, catching Anakin as he staggered forward. But before they could leave, a sound echoed through the chamber. Metal striking against metal. The unmistakable walk of Grievous. The general soon loomed in the hallway, 4 lightsabers igniting at once, casting a green and blue glow across the chamber. And behind him, the 4 Magna Guards stepped into formation, electrostaffs crackling to life. Anakin just grabbed his lightsaber, and he told Obi-Wan to please finish off Grievous while he takes the guards. Grievous laughed with excitement, then attacked with power. Obi-Wan dodged narrowly, deflecting 2 blades while sidestepping a third. He struck, aiming for an exposed joint, but Grievous countered with a kick, that sent Obi Wan crashing into a control table. He barely rolled away before another strike carved through the table where he'd just been, shredding it. Meanwhile, Anakin fought with everything that he had. The Magna Guards were forcing him back step by step. One staff caught him across the ribs, but he retaliated with a powerful strike that severed a droid's head. The other three backed off for a moment, and Anakin gave a shrug, as if to say, let's just get this over with. But across the room, Obi-Wan fake left, forcing Grievous into an overextension. Seizing the opening, Kenobi finally was able to lunge forward and drive his saber deep into the cyborg's exposed chest. Obi-Wan had the advantage in the darkness, and Grievous would now convulse, smoke pouring from the wound, until he finally collapsed. Obi-Wan turned, finding Anakin barely standing after defeating the guards. Obi-Wan exhaled with relief, and Anakin laughed, before saying it's just like old times, as Ahsoka, Rex, Cody, and clone medics would get to them. And by the time Anakin and Obi-Wan were back in the Jedi Council chambers, away from Felucia, they'd spoken together for a long while, and they'd made their choice together. They were leaving the Jedi Order, as they both came to the realization that it was no longer the right path for them. This was freeing and necessary for both of them, and Ahsoka would support Anakin in this path, as she would become Plo Koon's Padawan for the rest of her training. The war would carry on without them, every battle scripted by Dooku and Sidious. Without Anakin leading the 501st, or Obi-Wan leading the 212th, other Jedi would fill this void. The Separatists continued their campaign, but their endgame was near. Anakin would find himself in an unfamiliar but strangely comforting role as Padme's lead protector. He accompanied her to high-level meetings, watched as senators and diplomats fought for peace in ways far different from his own. Stepping away from battle allowed him to see this different path, and his love for Padme was no longer a secret. He'd been taught to believe that without the Order, he would have spiraled into darkness, but in truth, Anakin had never felt lighter. Obi-Wan, too, had found his place away from the Republic. He'd returned to Mandalore, to Satine, and he too became a protector, a diplomat, and ultimately a warrior once more when Maul resurfaced, seizing power through the remnants of Death Watch, but with the support of Mandalorian loyalists and people that supported Obi-Wan and Satine together, Obi-Wan defeated Maul and kept Satine alive. Padme and Satine's efforts to aid the war-torn systems became a shared mission, drawing Anakin and Obi-Wan together again. The four of them met frequently, working to bridge the growing divide between the Republic and the neutral worlds. All the while, Palpatine was watching Anakin in the shadows. He'd expected Anakin's departure from the Jedi to weaken him, to push him towards the anger and resentment that would make him a tool for the Sith. Instead, it was the opposite. Anakin had shed the burdens placed upon him and emerged stronger, more at peace. It was infuriating, but Sidious was patient. The war was reaching its final act, and with the right push, everything could fall into place. So when it was finally time, the attack on Coruscant would come swiftly. The Separatists had been losing ground, but this assault was about shifting the war in a final, decisive direction. Palpatine had orchestrated this moment, expecting to attack Coruscant, including an attack on Padme's home, and finally turn Anakin. But he'd underestimated his own current apprentice. Dooku had grown wary of the Dark Lord's intentions, as Sidious refused to let go of Anakin. He was obsessed with this chosen one. So, Dooku betrayed his master after orchestrating his capture. Palpatine's death would not be drawn out. Dooku was efficient, his blade severing the Sith's head, with Dooku ensuring he could not escape. And now, Dooku intended to take Coruscant for the Separatists and end this war. The Republic, thrown into disarray by Palpatine's sudden demise, was scrambling to defend itself. The Jedi, led by Windu, Yoda, Fisto, and others, were taking to the streets as Separatist forces flooded the city. The battle was relentless, long, and chaos consumed the skyline. But in the midst of it all, Dooku descended from the Separatist flagship, his red blade carving a path through the Republic army. He would end up in a duel, unlike any before. Dooku wanted to lead his army into the Jedi Temple, to take it by force. But first, he would have to defeat Windu and Yoda, and Dooku had become arrogant. He wielded his power with decades of Jedi and Sith experience, his every movement desperate with the need for victory, but for all his strength, all of his darkness, he faced down the two greatest warriors that the Jedi had left. And in the end, he as all Sith do, fell. With Dooku's capture, the Separatist forces would falter. The war had been built upon the schemes of Grievous and the two Sith Lords, and with all of them gone, the foundations quickly crumbled. The Republic could finally begin to recover. Anakin and Obi Wan, watching from the sidelines, saw a galaxy standing on the edge of uncertainty, but for the first time, they were free to help shape what came next. Together, with Padme and Satine, they turned their efforts towards bringing peace to the galaxy, and when the war was finally ended, they would both become Jedi again, not in the order that they left, but in a new Jedi Order where emotions and attachments could be felt, acknowledged, and used to keep a Jedi in the light after all. This order would of course be small, but in time, it would attract Jedi like Plo Koon, Ahsoka, Kit Fisto, and a dozen other Jedi Knights who would help to build up this order on Tython for years to come. And folks, that is our story for today. One I really enjoyed, and what I wanted to do with this one mainly was just the beginning part where Obi-Wan, kind of confides in the Council a little bit just about Anakin's trust and give the Council a choice. And I wanted to, in this one, we do a lot of, I do a lot of making the Council seem smarter than they maybe are, or less arrogant than they are. So I wanted to do a story where the Council is ultimately like, no, we're going to make the wrong choice and separate Anakin and Obi-Wan. And, this leads down a path where the two of them end up separated, and Obi-Wan's got to help Anakin, and in the end, they realize they don't want to be a part of it anyway, so they leave and start their own thing. So I enjoyed that. Hope you did as well. Let me know down below, and whoa, a little stutter there. Let me know what you want to see next, and I'll see you in the next video.